Right. Good morning to you all. Borida Ihigid. And thank you very much, Chris, for your warm welcome. Really, the reason I'm here is I'm one of those people who's developed a passion about building regulations and either zero carbon or near zero carbon buildings. And I haven't been able to stay away. So I'm really, really pleased to have been asked by Constructing Excellence Wales to chair this very exciting conference. Because in this conference you will hear very strong evidence about why their action should be taken, but also you'll get a real understanding from yourselves and others about the challenges that face both policymakers, developers, planners, builders, architects and others in terms of delivery of any policy aspiration. You'll know, many of you, that in the spring budget the UK government restated its commitment to zero carbon housing within the context of economic growth and housing. And obviously the 2016 deadline moves ever closer. To what extent are we in Wales prepared, or indeed any other part of the UK? What are the main elements comprising a zero carbon definition? How will Wales respond? What do you, those of you working across sector, want of Welsh Government? How can there be an appropriate response from everybody in Wales working together? And why should we do this anyway? And that's why we have Professor Kevin Anderson here, because he'll give us the science and the challenge, the widening gulf between the political rhetoric on climate change and the rapidly escalating emissions. And I think it's worth just reminding ourselves of some of the challenges and opportunities. I mean, in the context of the report from the UK Climate Committee, Meeting Carbon Budgets, the 2013 Progress Report to Parliament, Wales is performing less well than other parts of the United Kingdom, where emissions, for example, in Scotland have fallen by 10%, in Wales they have only fallen by 5%. And within the UK as a whole, carbon emissions rose by 3.5% in 2012. 3/5 of UK building-related CO2 emissions are from domestic buildings, and the increase can be partly related to the relatively cold winter in 2012, which increased heating demand, because without that emissions would have fallen by 1%. But DEC also points to the increasing use of electrical appliances in the home as another cause of increased emissions. And you'll all be aware of the major energy debate that's going on in the UK anyway. Now, the preliminary emissions data from 2012 shows that the carbon budget has been met, but in large part that's been related to the economic downturn. But the UK is not on track to meet its third or fourth carbon budgets. The committee's report states that without a significant increase in the pace of emissions reduction, very soon the costs and risks involved in moving to a low-carbon economy in 2020s and beyond will be increased. Some of you will also be aware that the UK government didn't like that very much and went straight back to the committee and said, look at this again and see if you come to a different view, and they didn't, and they reaffirmed their original view. Now, in the context, therefore, of the devolved administrations, Welsh carbon emissions account for around 8% of the UK total, when Wales has 5% of the UK population. And why has Wales only achieved its 5% reduction? The view of the Wales Low Zero Carbon Hub is that's related to low rate of renewable power capacity. Deployment here has been slower than other parts of the UK. Low penetration of low carbon heat programmes because incentives are weak and targeting is poor. And Wales has the second highest level of households using carbon intense fuels, i.e. oil and coal, in the UK after Northern Ireland. And 19% of the population in Wales not having programmes targeted at the appropriate households. Wales has the second highest proportion of fuel-poor homes in the United Kingdom, 29%, a group living in poor quality, low EPC homes and lacking the means to improve them. Wales has the highest proportion of solid wall properties in many areas that are exposed to driving rain, particularly recently. Water penetration of poorly maintained solid walls damages the thermal performance, creating more thermally inefficient buildings. And is Wales targeting money effectively? Funds are available from a number of sources, but not aggregated or directed in a coordinated manner, thus reducing their effectiveness. The Scottish government augments the eco-funds from its own budget. So how can the funding be captured and coordinated to be used as effectively as possible? The link between a property's energy efficiency and its market value has not yet been established in Wales. A recent DEC study of 325,000 homes in England shown that a significant price premium is now commanded by properties with higher rated EPCs, and we'll be hearing a bit more about that from the Minister. And Wales lacks a plan to create the conditions in which all homes in Wales are retrofitted for energy efficiency as quickly as possible. By contrast, Scotland has set itself a target of retrofitting all its domestic properties for energy efficiency in 10 years. This is a major challenge, and you'll be here today because of the fact that this conference is hoping to help people address this challenge. But there is a huge risk that without future intervention, future emissions will arise as the economy returns to higher growth. And therefore, some of those elements which are problematic at the moment will be exacerbated. But there is a great opportunity for Wales. Studies from around the world have shown that the benefits that result from large-scale domestic retrofit programmes aimed at energy efficiency, reduce fuel poverty and improve energy security. And outside the remit of the Wales Low Zero Carbon Hub, there are also other issues that have contributed to the poor rate of carbon emission reduction in Wales. The impact of the type of fuel used for power generation and the low rate of woodland planting. And of course the Minister joining us shortly is the Minister also responsible in the context of planting. Now, if we look at Europe's buildings, we see quite a different picture. There's a very interesting report called Europe's Buildings Under the Microscope. And in that report, I saw a figure that talked about average heating consumption levels in terms of final energy use, kilowatt hours per metre squared area, of single-family homes by construction year. And the picture across Europe, from Slovenia, that comes out at 34 kilowatt hours per metre squared, to Sweden at 124 kilowatt hours per metre squared, shows a pretty consistent picture across Europe. And then we come to the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has to have a chart that operates to different parameters. Because in terms of a pre-1920 mid-terrace, we're talking about 304 kilowatt hours per metre squared. A pre-1920 detached house, 585 kilowatt hours per metre squared. A pre-1920 end of terrace, 430 kilowatt hours per metre squared. A 1960s semi-detached bungalow, 350 kilowatt hours per metre squared. 1980s detached house, 268 kilowatt hours per metre squared. And the best, the post-2002 mid-terrace, is 102. We have to have a chart on our own because of how bad we are compared to the best of Europe. At best, double. At worst, a lot more than that. That is the challenge that we face in the context of this debate. Now, there are improvements, obviously, and Francois Samuel from The Welsh Government will be speaking about it later. There are now requirements to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 8% from 2010 level, agreed by Carl Sargent, the Minister, in July of this year. Not a major leap, but a small step, and a step very much in the right direction. But if we think of those legislative outcomes for 2020, that reduction will not lead to our meeting those legislative outcomes by 2020 without further intervention. In England, it's a 6% carbon reduction target for new build homes and a 9% cut for non-domestic buildings. So although still ahead of England, the reduction in Wales will need to increase, and it's very welcome there will be the review in 2016. But what that statement has done is enabled the real opportunity for a solid foundation to be established that will encourage long-term emission reduction. That reduction of 8% is achievable through fabric-first solutions and therefore reducing the energy demand of the buildings. And the amendments to Part L will move particular requirements of the Code for Sustainable Homes and BREEAM from planning to building regulations. And the best results for sustainable homes are achieved by getting the fabric right first. So the important message at the beginning of this conference is how can we get the right direction of travel for Wales? The Planning and Energy Act of 2008 states that a local planning authority in Wales may, in their local development plan, include policies imposing reasonable requirements for a proportion of energy used in the development in their area to be energy from renewable sources in the locality of the development, a proportion of energy used in development in their area to be low carbon energy from sources in the locality of the development, and development in their area to comply with energy efficiency standards that exceed the energy requirements of building regulations. So there is an opportunity for local authorities in Wales, working with the Welsh Government and others, to look at offering up the kind of solutions that you're seeing on the screen. What you're seeing on the screen is houses that already exceed the building regulations requirements and are doing it in a cost-effective way. So the future is here in the present. But how do we make sure that what we have in the future builds successfully on the present in a way that also meets the targets to eliminate fuel poverty in every household by May 2018. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a number of major challenges out there, we have a number of major opportunities out there, and I now call the Minister, Alan Davies, forward to tell us what is going to be taken forward by the Welsh Government. A very warm welcome, Alan.
Thanks very much, Jane. It's lovely to see you, lovely to join you this morning. I think it's the first time, Jane, I've actually spoken at a platform with you since I was appointed in the spring of last year. And can I say that a lot of what we're doing now was started by you and continued by you. And I have to say that the impact that you made on the agenda for government is one that we're still feeling and still reflecting now. And I am personally very grateful for the contributions that you made, and I hope that in taking forward some of the visions and the ambitions that you described as a minister, that we are delivering on the scale of that ambition and also reflecting the debate that's taken place over the last few years. It's a real pleasure to join you this morning. I'm also delighted, as I walked in, you were on the screen was the Larch House in Ebbw and it's something I visited in my constituency, of course, and I visited there a few months ago to talk to a family living there as well. So I think it's very easy sometimes that we talk about building regulations, we talk about Part L, which nobody's ever raised in my constituency, as you can imagine. And then you actually talk to people who live in homes such as that. And you talk to them about the impact it's made, the impact on their lives, the impact on bills, certainly, but the comfort levels that they feel living in some of these homes. And, you know, I've been profoundly disappointed sometimes by the nature of the wider public and political debate on a lot of these matters, because we talked about costs and the economic impact of different costs, and it's right and proper that we do so. But I think sometimes we should also talk about the human impact and the impact on much wider ambitions. If you have a large house again, it's a lovely place actually. I would advise anybody who hasn't seen it to go there, and the T. Enos development as well. But we need to talk about the human impact, and we need to talk about what we're seeking to achieve for people, and creating a very new and different place for people to live and bring up families in the future. I also want to speak this morning very briefly about why we do these things, what is the purpose of our policy in these areas, and what we want to achieve. One of the frustrations I felt as a backbencher, and I hope that we're addressing in government, is that all too often, many of the ambitions such as tackling climate change and addressing climate change were seen to be divorced from and separate to, and sometimes in conflict with, some of our other ambitions on tackling poverty, particularly fuel poverty, and tackling the difficulties facing people in their daily lives. I hope that we can bring these matters together, and I hope that we can bring these different visions together to ensure that in tackling climate change, we also tackle poverty. I do not see these issues as being mutually exclusive or in conflict with each other. In fact, I see them as being tightly aligned on the same agenda. Can I say this morning as well, in joining you at the beginning of this conference, that I hope we will be discussing today not only existing policy and existing standards and existing ambitions, but also creating the momentum to set our sights high. As Jane was saying in her introduction, we will always have policies, and we will always have standards and the rest of it as a government. But they do not define, and they must not and should not define, the limits of our ambitions. We need to create a momentum, we need to set our sights high, and building regulations part L or whatever, set minimum standards, not maximum standards. And we need to ensure, and my position in government is to ensure that the ambitions we set for ourselves are met and will be met in the future. As a minister for flooding at the moment, as you can imagine, the human impact of the changes in our climate are something which I see at first hand, and I see people affected by it. Can I say this? I believe that we're seeing significant changes at the moment in a way that we experience some of these different weather patterns. I believe it's linked to climate change. I do not deny the existence of it, as some politicians seek to do, and I believe that we need to tackle climate change, and we need to put climate change at the heart of what we do in government. And that is why we're bringing forward the Future Generations Bill. It is why the Future Generations Bill will be centred on creating a country, a nation, and a community where the interests of future generations are taken as a central part of decision making today and tomorrow. We will not take easy decisions today at the expense of future generations tomorrow. And I know that quite often climate change can seem like a global challenge a long way from Ebbowville, but the impacts are being felt at the moment. The impacts are being felt in communities up and down Wales, and we will need to address those, and to address those with a far-sighted ambition that I hope we're able to articulate in government. But we're also seeing the different pressures facing individual families and individual people. We're also seeing the impact of the increases in fuel prices and the impact that it is having on people's ability to live their day-to-day lives. I held a constituency surgery last Friday in Tredegar, and I was talking to a woman there who was telling me that her income, after she's paid off some of her bills, is around £40 a week. And she was telling me how cold she'd been over the last few weeks and last few months. She was telling me that she's now visiting a doctor more often because she's cold, because she can't sleep at night, because she's cold in a home where she's living. We need to address these issues, and we need to address these issues because of the effect it's having on people today, and we need to bring together the policy areas to ensure that we are able to address wider issues of climate change, whilst at the same time changing the life of the person I met in my surgery on Friday. Can I say, many of you will be aware of the decisions, and I presume you're all aware of the decisions taken by my colleague Carl Sargent on Part L of the regulations. Can I say this? As I said in my earlier remarks, we set minimum standards, we don't prescribe the limit of our ambitions. What I'm seeking to do, and what I want to do, and what I want to see government doing, is ensuring that we do have the ability in Wales to set our sights high and to meet the sorts of ambitions that we have. I hope that local government and others, I hope that businesses, I hope that builders will work together to ensure that the sorts of examples that we've already seen and I've already quoted will set the standard for the future, and that we will ensure that we do have not the minimum standards providing the minimum quality, but we have the maximum standards available to us within the resources we have available to us. And can I say this as well? When I was talking to people in the constituency, I was also, as well as speaking to the lady in the surgery, looking at new developments, new housing developments in Brimawr, and talking about how efficient they are. On a day like it was, I don't know where you all were on Friday, but in Brimawr, they had their windows open because of the efficiency of those homes, the efficient standards that they were building. They were in a situation whereby they were building the sorts of homes that I would be happy to live in, and that I would be happy for my family to live in. Social housing being built to the highest possible standards, the highest possible quality, investing not only in new housing stock, but investing in the lives of people. And one of the issues that I'm discussing at the moment, and we will be discussing in government over the next few weeks and months, is how we take forward some of our energy efficiency programs. We've already made improvements to around 9,000 homes in Wales. We know that Arbed has been a profoundly successful scheme. We know that it's had an impact on developing the energy efficiency market. In Wales, we know it has created new opportunities and new jobs. But we also know that we need now to look to the future. We know what we've achieved over the past few years. We know what we've achieved in policy terms and in delivery already. But we do need now to look at the sort of schemes that we will need to take forward into the new European programmes. One of the conversations I want us to have as a community and as a country in the next year or so is the scale of our ambitions for energy efficiency. I am absolutely sure and convinced that energy needs to be a fundamental part of our policy direction in the next few years. I will be announcing next month how I expect an energy theme to exist in the new Rural Development Plan, for example. But I also want to look at how we can potentially generate energy more locally. I want us to look at how we can ensure that our existing homes are made more energy efficient. And I want to ensure that we're able to develop, not only to continue to develop the market in energy efficiency here in Wales, but also to ensure that businesses in particular are able to address their energy needs and to ensure that they are resilient, not only to climate change, but also to changes in the market, delivering higher energy prices by generating energy as close to where it is used as possible. We've already achieved some things with the Ani of Raw scheme, but I want us to go much further. Again, it comes back to the scale of our vision and the scale of our ambitions and our vision. I again want us to create momentum and then take that through beyond what is demanded by policy. I'm anxious, and I want to see over the next few weeks and months that we establish a very, very clear direction of travel, that we establish a very, very clear sense of where purpose and sense of where we want to be. I want to work with yourselves and others. I want us to work together as a community and as a country to describe where we want to be, describe a place where our future generations will grow and work and live together. And I want us to be very, very clear about delivering the policy in framework and a policy environment that will deliver that. Can I say in closing I'm very grateful, Jane, for the work that you're continuing to do. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. I hope that when you finish your conversations today, and I hope your voices are in better form than mine. I've spent too much time shouting at the Blues on Saturday, I'm afraid. I hope that we will be able, together, to deliver a vision that is rooted in what we want to achieve, rooted in where we are today, but rooted in a very clear vision of where we want to be tomorrow. Thank you very much.